presented by Church Tech U. It's the ProPresenter Show. On today's show, how to use control.propresenter.com, also called ProPresenter Control, to control ProPresenter from a web browser remotely. Hi, and welcome again to the ProPresenter Show. This is the show where I help you out with ProPresenter. My name's Paul Allen Clifford. And before we get started, if you've ever wanted to have the ability for one other person to just like do that one thing that you always forget to do, or come and do some controls so that you don't have to think about them while you're running lyrics, go ahead, give me a thumbs up, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. So Renewed Vision, fairly recently as I'm recording this, in the last few months, released an API that enabled you to control ProPresenter. Well, I've gone over a lot of the things in that earlier, but I didn't get a chance to go over ProPresenter Control because that was the last thing that they released, and I recorded all the tutorials earlier, so I couldn't show you that. Well, it has been released now, and so I thought that we would go through it, and I would tell you some of the limitations and why they're there as I understand it. I don't talk to Renewed Vision every day, but I do talk to them from time to time, so sometimes I pick up on a few things that may not be widely known. So let's head over to the computer and I'll show that to you. So here we are in ProPresenter, and the first thing that I want to do is show you the website. So that's actually the API. We'll talk about that here in just a second. So if you go to control.propresenter.com, then you can enter the IP address of the computer you want to control. So if it's on the same computer, you could just type in 127.0.0.1, and that will do the same one. But this port number, that might be something that you don't know what that is. Well, let me show you where to get that. We can go to ProPresenter up here, then Preferences, then Network. And notice it has the IP address, so you could use this IP address if it's on another computer on the same network. That's an important piece. On the same network, and here's the port number. In my case, it's 1025. So let's head back over here and type in 1025, and then here, let me hide myself so you can see it. I'm going to click Connect, and it's going to establish a connection, and then I have a lot of control here. So this seems pretty cool, and by the way, I can disconnect it at any time by clicking up here and selecting Disconnect. It should say the name of the computer on the network. So I have a 13-inch MacBook Pro that I used to use that I occasionally will bring up, so it's not awake right now. Otherwise, I'd show you how to connect to it remotely. But so this is my 16-inch MacBook Pro, and you'll see that I've got the ability to switch between looks, to start capture, to turn on and off either all the audience screens or stage screens, more or less. I'll talk about that in a future tutorial. The announcements, stuff like that. So I have a lot of different controls here. One thing that I do not have, though, is I don't have next slide, previous slide. I can't select slides in a non-linear way. And you might be wondering why, with all the rest of this stuff, you know, I can select macros, I can go to different playlists, etc. I don't have that. As it turns out, Renewed Vision originally was going to call this the producer control panel. And so the idea was that one person would be controlling ProPresenter at the ProPresenter computer or using ProRemote or whatever. And then the producer would have access to all the rest of the stuff. They changed the name, but the way that they coded it remains the same. So that is why that's the case. But you might be asking yourself, Paul, what if I just wanted to control things like next slide, previous slide? Is there a way to do that? Maybe I want to have that in a different tab. Yes, and it's actually pretty straightforward. So let me go through that really quickly. You do have to know a little bit about HTML. Not a lot, just a little bit. And so let's head back over to the computer. And the first thing you want to do is remember that IP address that we talked about earlier. Well, you'll need to put that into this API here. So right now it's set to, again, 127.0.0.1 : and then this actually has the wrong port number here. So I would need to change that to 1025, getting these things from exactly the same place as I showed you before in the network thing. And now, got announcements, capture, clear, go down here, macro, mask, media, message, miscellaneous, which is just find my mouse. Presentation. So I think it's down here. Here, let's see what it is. So capture, no, trigger. So let me look back here. I've actually, this is the HTML showing here for, this is really simple, this guy right here. So I've got start and stop for my capture, and then next slide and previous slide. So it's these two that I would want to do. Notice I put in the IP address. This is not going to work because my port has changed, so I can't show you how to do that. But that's basically what it is. It's just ahref equals, quote, the HTML address, including : and the port number, then v1, because this is version 1 of the API, trigger, and then next. Let's see if we can't find that here. So trigger, yep, here it is. I looked right past it. So right here it is. So in order to get that, now that I've updated the address and the port up here, so scrolling all the way down here, this one, for next, I'm going to go down here and then I'm going to click try it out. And now, if I go down here and select execute, it gives me that web address right there. So I could just copy that, or right click and copy, whatever, and then paste that into this area here in an HTML document, which is just a text document with .html on the end. So I called mine Pro7 API test.html, and I saved that on my desktop. So I can do it here. And so I could have this, I could drag this off and I could smush this down really small and have that right next, and then I could do next slide, previous slide, while I have this up. So I'm just going through between two web pages basically, or I could have it as two different tabs, up to you, which you choose to do. One other thing that I do want to talk about though is, actually I should not have smush that down, is there's another way to get to ProPresenter Control where you don't need to know anything if it's on the same computer that you're controlling. And if it is, you go to, oh darn, so view, yes, view ProPresenter Control. And when you do that, it pops it up automatically. And the reason I want you to know that is if you're on the same computer and it's you don't want to go through the trouble of going to the web page, or maybe you don't have internet access where you are, then you can get this. And you can always replace this number, this local host, with the actual IP address. Oh, helps if you type it correctly, 127.0.0.1, and then that should go there. So localhost or 127.0.0.1 will work on the same computer. If you instead use, if you remember all this but you type in the IP address of the other computer on the same network, then you can do it on a different one, and then you have access to all these controls. You know, you can start certain timers, you can put in certain props, you can see exactly the system time, show messages, etc. All here within ProPresenter Control. So there's a lot of power that they've added, and the ability to, this is a nice user interface. Mine, not so much, but if you want to know how to do that, you can just pause the video here, copy and paste this into a text document, save it with the .html extension, and then just double click on it and it should bring up a web browser here. So remember, the IP address of the ProPresenter computer goes here, colon, and the port, but everything else should be the same. And then you'll get something that's not particularly good looking, but should work for you if that's what you want. If you like this content, you'd like my ProPresenter 7 Quick Start course, so head on over to TDM.fyi/Pro7Quick. Put in your name and email address, and I will make a login for you for free instead of charging you for that class like I charge for other classes. And you can get take that just whenever you want. I update it from time to time, so even if you've taken it before, it might be worth looking at again. Until next time, this is Paul Allen Clifford from TrinityDigitalMedia.com and ChurchTechU.com, reminding you to go out and change eternity.